The Epson V600 is a pretty awesome scanner for what it is. It's pretty affordable, and when you're posting your photos on social media or you're making relatively smaller prints, it is awesome. Now, it's no secret, obviously, that paying 10 times more for a drum scan is going to give you way better results. And even if you don't pay 10 times more for a drum scan and choose to just get a lab scan with a nice scanner, it's way better than the Epson V600. But I want to show you a direct, quick, side-by-side example of the lab scans I got from the Darkroom in California. I paid for their super scans and my scans here on the Epson V600. And then at the end, I'll show you an example too of a camera scan. I used the camera that you're watching right now, the Sony A7C, with a macro tube adapter to do my own camera scans, which are really, really close to the super scans I got from the Darkroom. Let's start with this photo of a nice gentleman named Charles. If you haven't seen my video where I asked him the question, what advice would you give to your younger self if you could go back in time and give yourself advice, I would highly recommend checking it out. I think it's going to be in one of these corners wherever YouTube puts their thing. It's only 2 minutes and he gave some awesome perspective over what advice he'd give to himself. But let me show you this side-by-side example. I won't even, try to make you guess. You can guess if you want in the time that I'm literally talking to stall. But the lab scan is on the left and the Epson V600 scan is on the right. I tried to edit them to be as close to one another as possible. And at this size, and while I'm looking at it on my screen, they're about, 8 inches wide each in real life. And on this size, whether it's 8 inches by 8 inches or you're posting on social media, they're pretty close. Close enough that most people aren't gonna say, wow, look at that one on the left, it's totally a lab scan, look at how sharp it is. They're both pretty sharp at this distance. When you zoom into them though, let's just zoom in on Charles' face here. That's where you start to see the major difference, is that the lab scan here on the left is crazy sharp. I would almost say a little bit too sharp. It kind of looks like they might have added some sharpening in addition to getting perfect focus on the grain. But my goodness, you're looking at how much detail and grain you're missing out on with the Epson V600. Like I said, still sharp. And by the way, I missed focus just so slightly on his face. I nailed the focus on his arm in his pocket. And I haven't done dust removal here, so don't mind that, but you can seriously see here just how sharp the lab scan is in comparison to the Epson V600. Let me show you another example. Again here, lab scan on the left, V600 scan on the right. And again, when you're looking at this, even as 8x8 and I'm, a foot and a half away from my screen, not a huge difference. But when you zoom in, and I'll zoom in on his face, that's where you see what you're missing out on when you use the Epson V600. The grain of the film is just so perfectly in focus with the lab scan. I mean, I think where it's the most striking is the Adidas logo on his hat. And right here I'm at 145%. So this is, to look at it this close, a foot and a half with this much detail, is a seriously large print, okay? But, the stripes of the Adidas logo kind of blend together in the V600 scan. It's really blurry. And here it's pretty clearly defined, okay? You should either pay for those lab scans if you plan to make large prints or really want to maximize the amount of detail you're getting out of your film, or you should do it with the DSLR mirrorless camera, professional camera that you already have. So let me show you one last final comparison of my camera scan versus the lab scan and that camera scan versus the V600 scan. Again, we've got the lab scan on the left and the camera scan this time on the right. And again, at this distance, I'm looking at literally an 8x8, 1 foot and a half away display of these photos, little to no difference. And when you zoom in, and like I said earlier, I nailed the focus on his hand in his pocket. When you zoom in, I mean, wow. I paid for the super scans here on the left from the Darkroom, and they crushed it. You're seeing just how much detail you can get with the camera scan. And let me leave the camera scan there and bring up the V600 scan on the left this time. Yeah, oof. Again, like when you zoom out, not a huge difference. Perfect for social media, perfect even for making prints, 10 by 10, maybe even 12 by 12 if you're feeling it, bold. But there's just so much you're missing out on with the V600. Now, I have had issues with the V600 in the past. The first V600 that I bought was giving me what I thought was just bad scans. So I called Epson and said, I think there's something wrong with my scanner. They sent me a replacement. I sent my original one back, and sure enough, I compared my original copy of the V600 against the one that Epson sent me as a replacement, and the replacement one was sharper. And this on the left here, this example, is the replacement scanner, right? That's about as sharp as it's gonna get. If you needed something to convince you to spend $30 on Amazon or eBay or whatever, B&H, to buy a macro extension tube for the lens and digital camera that you already have, to use that setup and do your own camera scanning, this is it. I mean, there's no question that you're getting just a world better, I have no words to describe, just such a better scan than you can get from an Epson V600. And if you want to invest in the equipment, let's say a light box, a copy stand, and that macro extension tube, if you don't have a macro lens, it might cost you the same that you would spend on the Epson V600 brand new, and it'll definitely cost you less than if you were to buy, let's say, the Epson V800. And from what I've seen online, camera scans are still better than what you're getting from the V800, V850, V700, all those higher end flatbed scanners. I hope this was helpful for you, and if it was, hit subscribe, follow along. I post things like this, but also a lot of storytelling through film. I'd love for you to be a part of my first 1,000 subscribers. Regardless, I'll see you in the next video.